In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term, gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. I'm your host, Tina Tarryk, and with me today are my guests, Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher from Hackensack, New Jersey, and Bible researcher of almost, 30 years now.
Getting
Sid?
close to it.
Okay, welcome.
Hi, Tina.
And Reverend Hewitt, founder and pastor of Gifts of the Spirit Church that used to be in Chesterfield, Connecticut, and is now moving to Charleston, South Carolina, which we will talk about a little bit more in detail in this show, and medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Tina.
And as I mentioned, discussing in this show the movement of the Gifts of the Spirit Church is going to be the focus of this program. This program is going to be created especially for the Charleston, South Carolina area. And we're going to cover with you exactly why it is very important that this particular show is being created for Charleston and why this particular church is moving to Charleston. With that, what I'd like to do is to have Carl discuss just a little bit about why he's moving down. And we have also a little bit of a clip about an experience that you had in the Myrtle Beach area, which isn't too far from Charleston, as all of you know, from the Charleston area. Carl.
Well, I'd have to go back to the 70s. I spent a lot of time in Charleston, sometimes as much as 2 months, and worked in Florida and all the southern states. But it was Charleston that something wonderful happened at one of the seances that we had there. And it was there that a message came, and if the viewers are not familiar with this, in the American Dictionary, the word precipitation, the very bottom of it in the dictionary, it says, as used in spiritualism. Now, precipitation, some people, very few that I know of, have the gift of, whereas pictures, messages appear on cards in a seance, and I received this message in 1982, and it said, "You will be the guiding star of his existence in the near future." Well, that was a heavy statement, but I was in denial for such a long time with that because I didn't think I was worthy of such a mission. But all of that has come true, and I want to, as Tina was saying, I want to dedicate this tape to all the people of Charleston. And when they hear this and find out how important they are with the making of this tape and how important it is for me to move down there and enlighten the people, it's really mind-boggling as far as I'm concerned. And so I've already moved most everything down there, and I'm going to have a seminar on the 10th, Saturday the 10th of July, Making Known the Unknown. Now, did you want me to mention the experience I had down there when I was down there before, or are we going to get into that later?
What I think we'd like to do is, since you just mentioned that message that you had got from for lack of a better word, you called it precipitated art, but it came through on what all of you would know as a fortune cookie. When you go to these restaurants and you open up the message, he had a very unusual message and in a color that you usually wouldn't see in a fortune cookie. So if our control room could bring up that message, and there's precipitated art that also came along with it after the fact,
Right.
maybe you could discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, the control room would have to go to the other clip. It's because we're doing it in a different order right now.
Okay.
But it was come through at this particular meeting, and what happened was that it was a very spiritual message. It was just something you normally don't receive on a fortune cookie. So if when the control room gets ready, and this has provided the groundwork for his move down there
Okay.
because of this message.
All right.
I don't like that word fortune cookie one bit, because a lot of people laugh at this and make fun of it, and I just don't like it at all.
Okay, so we should be able to see that at this point.
Seminar in Charleston, South Carolina. On April 24th, at the final seance, everyone received a message through the same process as precipitated art. Reverend Hewitt's message read, "You will be the guiding star of his existence in the near future." 17 years later, in August of 1999, and again in 2000, Reverend Hewitt received confirmation that this message was referring to Jesus when he received 2 portraits of Jesus on Hoyt's precipitated cards.
Thank you, Sidney. That was a remarkable clip. You're not receiving a fortune cookie that's green, plus it has that message on it. That's not usually your average message when you go to a Chinese restaurant.
And nobody else at that meeting received a green message on green paper. His was the only one that was in green.
Okay.
All the others were amber color.
All right. Now, you received this message before or after this phenomenal or traumatic event that happened in Myrtle Beach?
At the end, before that.
It was before that?
Yes,
Okay.
because when I was there, I was on the radio, WCSC radio and WCSC TV, and I was really teaching the gifts of the Spirit. And it was being listened to and watched from Myrtle Beach, which is about 100 miles north of Charleston. And there was a wealthy family in Myrtle Beach that wanted me to do a one-evening seminar on my way back north. And I accepted, and this man said, my family will pay for all expenses, we'll rent a place, we'll advertise it and everything else. And I didn't know who these people were, and they told me to meet them at 6:30 at the first McDonald's on the south side of the beach, and I did. And I followed them to the hotel, which was the Breakers Hotel, which is right on the edge of the ocean. And they had rented the ballroom, which was really where the penthouse should be, which was a fabulous ballroom. And the minute I drove up there, my car was surrounded by police. And there was a sheriff there with a warrant for my arrest if I walked into that hotel and spoke to anybody. Okay. I was so shocked that I could not believe it, because everything I was teaching in Charleston was really from the Bible. There's a lot of people that don't understand that book. Jesus only taught gifts of the Spirit. That's all it was, and so I was carrying that message to the people. But at Myrtle Beach, somebody didn't want their people to know this.
Actually, we have a clip of a more recent time that you have visited Myrtle Beach since that incident. And I think that clip does it justice when you visited that area, I should say, and described exactly what happened. So we have that to share with our viewers.
Well, first of all, I was so hurt and shocked at that experience that I didn't go back down there for years.
Okay.
I was very afraid to go there.
Right. And now we're going to hear more of the details as to why.
We're doing this film in December of 2002. Although the event took place in 1979, I did a lot of radio and television work in Charleston, South Carolina, and it certainly must have drawn a lot of attention. And the people here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, certainly picked up a lot of information and became very interested in what I was teaching, because I was teaching the gifts of the Spirit, the same thing that Jesus taught. And there was a lot of people who asked me questions, since I have been teaching gifts of the Spirit, born with the gifts of the Spirit myself. And the people wanted me to come here and teach the same thing that I was teaching the people in Charleston. So they rented the penthouse, which you'll see at the top of the tower here. It's a large ballroom, and they rented this, and there was quite a lot of publicity, and the place was sold out. So on my way back to Connecticut, I stopped here, and I had never met the people that was in charge of this until that very night. And when I appeared here, my car was surrounded by police cars, and all of the police came out and surrounded my car, and the sheriff appeared there and gave me a summons that if I appeared here and attempted to even do this, I would have been arrested and put in jail. And I was so shocked at this that I didn't know what to do. I was also exhausted from so much work in Charleston that I didn't attempt to fight it. And so I wound up going to the house of the people who put this all together for me. And all we were doing was talking about it, because they had never heard of such a thing in their life, of people getting together to prevent anyone coming here and even talking or discussing anything like this, because I was speaking from the Bible, the gifts of the Spirit. And so, since the question has been presented to me so many times, is this: why did Jesus really die for the sins of the world? No, he did not. He died for the sins of the priest, you see. So my answer to that, people, is simply this: he died for the sins of the priest, not for the sins of the world. So you see, something happened to me that night after I left this building and went to the family that put this together. I stepped on something in their yard from the time I got out of my vehicle to the time I reached their house. I stepped on something that went through my shoe, but yet there was no pain there like would if you stepped on a nail or something. And when I got into the house, without thinking, because we were still talking about all the police and all that went on, I put my foot up this way, and I was trying to get whatever this was out, not even looking. I was not thinking. I was trying to loosen this up, whatever it was. And then the wife of the man that arranged all of this, she started screaming, pointing to my foot. And at the same time, he noticed too. There was a spike all the way through my shoe, and it stuck out about 1.5 inches above my shoe. It had gone through the bottom of the foot up and about 1.5 inches from the top, and all the way through the shoe, through the foot. And I managed to get my fingers underneath of it, just like that. It was a big head to it, just like a nail, but much bigger, between the size of a nickel, the size of a quarter. I managed to pull it out. There was no blood, no water, and no pain. I managed to pull it out, and the woman was hysterical. She wanted to get me to a doctor or whatever, and she was afraid I would get tetanus and all of this, but for some reason it didn't bother me. And I didn't give it a thought that accident was connected with what I was attempting to do. And so I left. I finally left that night, driving home, and it was about 2 days later that I noticed, I gave it some thought, and I noticed there was no scar on my foot, and I couldn't even see anything in where it went through the shoe. And I started thinking it was my imagination. So when I contacted the people, they said it really did happen. Then I was told by the voices that it really did happen, but they wanted to make sure that I did not suffer from it, because 2,000 years ago, the great teacher that we all know about suffered a great deal because the spikes went through his feet and hands, and he suffered a great deal. He died for the sins of the priests, because what he was teaching they could not compete with, because he was teaching the gifts of the Spirit, whereas I was attempting to teach the same thing. And the churches on the planet here, they do not want people to understand this, because what they changed at the Council of Nicaea in the year 325 was really they had taken everything dealing with the gift of the Spirit out of the book and changed it all and put in their own interpretations, because they did not want people to understand that it was all within themselves. They wanted people to think that God was outside of them, and this is what it was all about. And so they wanted me to know that I was going in the right direction, but they didn't want me to suffer from this. So here I am and have been trying to teach the people that God is within them, and that once people understand that gifts of the Spirit existed then, exists now, that people have to understand this. And when they do, then they understand that they're following the teachings of Jesus. Very simple. It isn't complicated at all. And so I wanted to bring this teaching to you, but there's so many things that I did not understand then that I understand now, because it took me a long time to accept the fact that he has been working with me all these years. So I'm down here for this reason, to show you that what happened here at the Breakers Hotel, there was a reason for that. So regardless of the consequences of doing this tape, I want the people to know that Jesus did not die for the sins of the world. He died for the sins of the priest. He suffered terribly an awful death. I've suffered too because of what I've had to go through. The terrible thing that I went through that night with the police surrounded, people wondering why, what I had done and everything else, the embarrassment and everything else. I tried to get people to understand. And they have taught me that religion is nothing in the world but franchises. People should wake up and understand that God is within themselves. Religion is a big business, and when people understand that God is within themselves and how they can turn within and understand the truth about this, they'll truly be saved from ignorance, fear, superstition. Simple as that. Go within. So be it.
Wow.
Years.
Carl,
it took me years
I respect you
before I ever
tremendously.
figured out that
You have now decided to return to an area where you were pretty much outcast from that particular event. And of course, the details of why the police were involved and all of that remains to be uncovered. And I'm guessing that you are going to at some point reveal some of that soon.
at the seminar that I'm doing on July the 10th, I'm going to be sharing with people in Charleston something wonderful that happened actually in Charleston after that date. Something that I didn't know about until I made this trip down there, because I've been asking God, shall I say, what happened, because something wonderful happened in Charleston. And as I went around asking a lot of people, I didn't get the specifics that I was looking for, but then I was told from another dimension what it was. And I want to share this with the people of Charleston. Charleston, that one city, it was back here in January, we heard the news up here that this group of people went all over the country, went to every big city in the United States, and Charleston was the one that was highly rated. The people are the friendliest, kindest, nicest people of all of the United States. I mean, that's a powerful expression, and that was on the news up here. And then when I went down there, I also found out it was true, and I found out why. And I'm willing to share that with the people, plus some other wonderful things for the Charleston people.
Now, I can share that with you as well, because I have since visited the Charleston area, and that was my first time. And the people are kinder than kind.
Yes.
They're polite. Everyone smiles. It's wonderful. So it's a very wonderful feeling to be there. But, Carl, you're going back to the Bible Belt, where this started, where people didn't want you there, didn't want to hear what you had to say. You're coming back? Are you crazy? With all due respect, why are you going back to this area? They're going to eat you alive. Aren't you concerned with that?
Well, there were people that said that Jesus was crazy too, and all of that, and he was trying to teach. He was really teaching the gifts of the Spirit. That's all he was teaching. And the widow that offered him her spare room up above her pottery shop, if he would go there with his students and clean it out, they could use it, no rent expected at all, and he praised her for that. And it was there that he taught his 12 students, and only 3 of them developed to be an instrument of the Spirit, and that was Peter, James, and John. The rest of them did not. The same as was in my classes over the years, maybe 1, sometimes out of 12, sometimes it was 3 out of 20, but very seldom. This is what he taught. And now I know why he has been connected with me, appearing to me, and I refused. When he said who he was the first time, I said, yeah, I'm Abraham Lincoln. And
To get back to your question, Tina, I asked the same question of Awan, the angel without a name, when Carl was in trance. Why should Carl go to the Bible Belt? And Awan explained that many of the people living down there have a really deep understanding of the Bible.
Yes, they do.
They know the Bible, so that when we teach them the psychic phenomena that's within the Bible,
Yeah.
they're going to know the story a lot more than people from other religions who don't study the Bible as well. And he says once you open their eyes to their understanding, that it's going to be like a ground swelling effect.
Okay.
when I was on the radio down there, we got several calls, and the same statement was made from the callers, and that is, how come our churches, how come our ministers do not explain those things in the Bible? See, all the people down there, they know all of this information that's in the Bible, but they don't know the meaning of it. And I was told by the voices from the other dimension, from the world of spirit, the kingdom of spirit, I was told to teach them. And because I've been asking questions all my life, because Jesus says, ask and you shall receive, I have asked. I never stop asking questions. I even asked that simple question, why do they use the word amen at the end of a prayer? I got an answer for that too. And I also asked what happened in the last 22 years in Charleston. That's the message that I want everybody in Charleston to hear. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then a year and a half ago, I was in Charleston with one of my students, and something happened on Bay Street. Actually, this person who was very angry because I was driving a little slow and he wanted to go by me, you know, and finally he went by me, shot by me, and that's a two-way street, and his mirror on the side of his truck hit the mirror on the side of my truck, and he was furious, and so he pulled right in front of me and made me stop, and the voice told me to get outside, stand outside the car, but don't say a word. Don't say a word. We'll take care of it. And the word says, we'll take care of it. And then he walked over to me within 4 feet. He put his hand out and shook hands with me. That's a God's truth. And my student who was standing on the sidewalk, he said, I never seen anything like this in my life.
The guy went from being furious to being peaceful.
And I want the people to know in Charleston exactly what happened there and what happened in the last 22 years while I was gone that caused such a great change in Charleston. You all should know that. It's a wonderful message, and it's coming from the one that most of you people worship.
Now, Sidney, you mentioned AWAN.
Yes.
For our new viewers in the Charleston area who may not be familiar with AWAN, can you tell them who AWAN is or what AWAN is?
Awan is an ascended master, meaning that he lives in the highest realms of the spirit world, and he communicates to Carl. Carl has seen him because Carl has clairvoyant vision. Also, Carl goes into trance, meaning his spirit leaves his body, and Awan's spirit goes into Carl's body and then can speak to me on a physical level. I can physically hear what he's saying. We record the conversations. I've had many conversations with Awan, and that's been the basis for the book that Carl and I wrote, which is my first encounter with an angel. So that's a first book of a trilogy. The other two books are still to be published. And also the basis of our new second book that is coming out, which is going to be crossovers. He has provided us with all kinds of information. Much of what he said has riled me up. In fact, in our first conversation, he told me the Bible had been changed. And since I grew up in a Orthodox, conservative Jewish background, and I had been taught that the Torah had never been changed, and they count all the letters when they write it out, and this and that, I argued with Awan quite profusely, and finally Awan must have gotten a little bit disgusted with me, and said, "Well, if you won't believe me," he said, "I challenge you to disprove me. You prove to me that the Bible hasn't been changed." And so I agreed to that, and I started doing some research and looking at some really old Bibles. The first one I looked at was the Coverdale Bible of 1535. And noticed that what was written in that Bible in 1535 was a lot clearer in language and had a lot more psychic information than the King James of 1611 or many other Bibles. Since that date, I've researched about 260 Bibles, 65 Bibles at this point, and some of them New Testament, some of them Old Testament, some combinations, and have discovered the Bible has been changed over and over. The wording is so vastly different in some of them. In fact, some of the translators, you think they might have been using some sort of substance to alter their consciousness with the words they chose to use. So A1 was right, and since that time, we've discussed all kinds of information, and because I'm a librarian, I was able to go and research what A1 taught me, and have been able to find documentation to corroborate just about 99% of everything that A1 has ever said, and it's always been right. And whatever he said is, I've never been able to find that A1's been wrong.
You know what I like about this? I like that you came in disbelieving and having a whole other set of beliefs.
Right.
Was he ever a disbeliever?
Right, and then because you were challenging to contradict the entities that were working through Carl,
right,
you actually found the truth that way on your own.
Yes.
You weren't being brainwashed.
No.
And we won't get into what entities and organizations are responsible for what's going on
Right.
today that has to do with brainwashing. But I like that. I really like that. And it's been, how many years now?
Oh, close to about 28, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I think the most amazing thing that happened all during this time, because the only way I can keep up with what's going on is to listen to the tapes after, because when I'm in the trance state, I don't know what's going on. And some of that stuff is so heavy. But I think the most interesting thing that the whole world should really know about is when this young man came for a reading with me, and he had a gun under his coat, and the entity that took over my body told him to put the gun on the desk, otherwise he's not going to use this body to give him a reading. And he finally put the gun on the desk, and but the young man wanted to kill himself that afternoon. He was going to kill himself because he found out that he was a homosexual, and the information that came from this entity, he said, "I'm going to prove to you that homosexuals are born this way because it goes back and it's the after effects of a religion." And that's what I will be explaining to the people in Charleston. Everybody on the planet should know that truth. And he gave details of where this happened, what part of the world, and Mr. Schwartz and one of my other students went with me, and we went to another country, one of the old countries. Actually, it was Turkey. We went there and we found out exactly what he said. what Awan said.
We found the evidence carved in a stone monument, corroborating exactly what Awan had said. And I had said to Carl, I said, I can't write this book. This story is so fantastic. I know everything. I've looked up at this point. Awan's always been right. He's probably right again. But this is just too fantastic for me to write a book about without some hard evidence. And lo and behold, we finally got there. We were there. It was our last stop that we could possibly find the information. And I had seen pictures of the monument and knew for sure we weren't going to find anything. And sure enough, it was there. It was because the pictures I had seen were not close enough and there wasn't enough detail to see it. But sure enough, it was there, and he was right one more time.
So now with Carl's mediumistic abilities, your research abilities coming together, you put together a very powerful package of information and knowledge to share with the world.
Right.
Now, tell me what's going to be happening on July 10th of this year at the Town and Country Inn and Conference Center in Charleston.
I desire to show the people and demonstrate them the different gifts of the Spirit. Just like when Jesus was teaching his 12 students, Peter, James, and John were the only ones that developed, you see, and they did not fully develop the way he wanted, but they were the highest on the scale, so to speak. And I want to show the people, for instance, these pictures behind us here, how that is done, untouched by human hands, but there has to be a medium in the crowd. And so this medium is going to be here in Charleston at that time. For me, I've known him quite a while, and I will never have anybody but genuine mediums to demonstrate their work. I want people to know that what is written in the Bible and what it is a fact, but you have to find the right person who has the gift of the Spirit. And there's a lot of people out there that think they are mediums, but they're not.
One of the primary messages we're going to be talking about is going into the Bible, not heavily, but for people to realize that every time, all the major personalities were mediums. Abraham, Isaac, Jesus, Isaiah, all those people had some sort of mediumistic ability. We've done seminars where we've spent 10 hours going through the Bible piece by piece and explaining everything and teaching everything. Obviously, we won't have that kind of time to do that on July 10th. So we're just going to give some very short highlights of how even in the Hebrew words have a lot more psychic meaning than ever gets into English when it's translated here. So we want to give the people a taste of that message of mediumship in the Bible. Also, we're going to be talking about what Jesus really talked about, what he really taught the people, as opposed to what's recorded in the book, because it's been doctored and changed, just like Awan said. We're also going to be talking about what Awan has taught, because Awan has taught us a whole body of knowledge that isn't in the Bible, and we're going to be presenting some of that, plus the precipitated art, and that's the main highlights we could go into.
Okay.
I also want the viewers to realize that the word psychic means soul and mind. A lot of people are too lazy to look at the dictionary, but it's there, soul and mind. And this is what it's about. I'm going to also teach the people about the two bodies that we have and how it works, you see.
Okay.
This is something they're not being taught out there.
Now, Sidney, did you have a little something you wanted to share with us about precipitated art?
Yes.
And then we could talk a little bit about some of the art
artwork
on this set here?
Yes. If the control room could bring up the first graphic that we've prepared. Tina, right now in the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art, which is pictured here, there's a special display. It's called Byzantium, Faith and Power from 1261 to 1557. If we could have the next picture, please. That's the banner that's outside that's displaying this particular exhibit. I went to visit this exhibit with a friend of mine, and while we were there, I saw something that was on one of the signs in this exhibit, and you're not allowed to photograph in the museum itself. But if we can have the next slide, please. What they have there is they have a book for people who can't read, have a hard time reading, and this is the signs that are in the exhibit that are printed up. And so I went into the museum yesterday, and I took this book, and I went into the bathroom, and I photographed this particular signage. So it wasn't a real sign. If we could have the next one. This particular sign that was so important to me was talking about Byzantine icons. And this was part of the decree of the Second Council of Nicaea in 787. And it says, "We decree with full precision and care that the revered and holy images are to be exposed in the holy churches of God, on sacred instruments and vestments, on walls and panels, in the houses and by the public ways. And more frequently they are seen in representational art, the more those who will see them drawn to remember and long for those holy figures who serve as models, and to pay these images the tribute of salutation and respectful veneration." Next one, please. It goes on to say that icons, which is from the Greek ikonos or images, acted as powerful expressions of the Orthodox Christian faith. By Orthodox, they mean the Eastern Church, not the Roman Catholic Church, but the Eastern Church that was in Turkey and ended up to be the Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian churches.
Okay.
From the founding of the empire in the 4th century, images of Christ, the Virgin, and saints had been central in the Byzantine religious, political, and social life, serving in the imperial ceremony, personal devotion, and public celebration. This is the important part. Orthodox theology considered icons to allow the viewer direct communication with the holy figure represented. The prayers were addressed to the holy figure, not to the painted image. So what they believed was that if they were looking at this particular image and they were praying, they were talking directly to that particular person. Now this is exactly what Awan had told me in a different way. He said that all the statues and icons were training wheels to get people to send their prayers outward instead of inward into their own soul. Instead of looking to the God within, they were addressing it to these particular statues and icons. So I became very excited when I saw this particular thing, because again, it was more documentation of exactly what A1 said. Because as Jesus taught, as you're about to look up, it said that the kingdom of God is within. And if the camera can go to Tina right now, it says, neither shall they say, lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. And it's in Luke 17:21. Okay, here's the picture, the quote of that. If we can go back into the graphics that we have prepared, I also brought a book, the book of the exhibit, which the cover is coming up very shortly. The next graphic, good. And in another thing they talked about was this particular word, which is in the glossary of this book, which is on the next slide. And forgive me because my pronunciation of being able to say Greek is probably going to be way off. But the Greek word is akriopotios, which is Greek, which means not made by human hands. Term used to describe images depicting Christ, the Virgin, or a saint that initially appear in miraculous fashion or that are able to replicate themselves without human intervention. This is the Greek word for what we term precipitated art. In other words, this happened through spirit and not through human beings. If we could have a picture of the next picture coming up, this particular icon was supposed to be precipitated art, or saying the Greek word. There's a whole story in the book here, which I'm not going to take the time to read, but it has something to do with the legend of Abgar, the king of Edessa, and he was precipitated for this particular king, the same way that these pictures were precipitated for us through mediumship. The next graphic, please. The story in the Bible, which is one of the stations, excuse me, let me correct that. This story is not in the Bible, but is one of the stations of the cross, and that has to do with Veronica, who went up to Jesus as he was carrying the cross and wiped his face with a cloth, and his picture appeared on the cloth. This is a representation of that particular event. And that would also be precipitated art, and this is an artist's conception of it. And if we can have the last graphic, it's another one of Veronica's, what they call Veronica's veil. So there is historical, biblical reference to precipitated art, not using that term, using the Greek term that existed, but it's the same type of thing. Okay, the pictures that are behind us here, the one above us, all on the set here and below us, these were all initially 3x5 cards that went into a basket with magic marker or felt tip pens and with crayons and crepas and pencils and stuff. And in the presence of Hoyt Robinette, who's the medium, Spirit is able to precipitate these pictures. These pictures were not touched by human hands. They're archaeopotius, if you want to use the Greek word. They were not touched by human hands. They were all written. They were all drawn by Spirit, just the way those icons supposedly were drawn by Spirit. And the message for each of the pictures is supposed to have a meaning for the person who receives the card. On the back of the card, the person's name is written out. Spirit writes out the name, and also the Spirit people that work with that particular person also can sign the cards, and it's given to the person. Okay. Behind us here, these two angels. This angel was given to me. This one was given to Carl. And that was one of the messages that we received at one point. So we're going to be talking about precipitated art and showing some of the examples. These posters will be with us as well as other things we have scanned into the computer, because we take these pictures and have them scanned into the computer, so we have a record of them before we give them back out to the people when the seances are done under our control.
Now, we're going to have one medium at that seminar. That's Reverend Carl Hewitt. And there's going to be yet another medium there who can who does precipitated art. And
it's our hope that he will be able to have some produced right there at the seminar.
That's exciting.
So that some of the people at the seminar will receive a card like this.
If any of you viewers have never heard of this, never seen this before, it is worth your while to come and have this experience and to be witness to this.
It's mind-boggling. Let me add this. My mother, my middle name is some name I never liked, so it's Rutherford. And I would never use it. And at one of the seances, my mother came through and wrote my name out, Carl Rutherford Hewitt, on the back of the card. And I said, there's only one person that would do that, and that was my mother, and it was her handwriting.
That's funny.
And my mother passed away in 1983.
One thing I forgot to mention when we were reading about the Second Council of Nicaea, the reason that they passed that decree is because this whole idea of images and icons really goes against what's written in the Ten Commandments, because in the Ten Commandments it says, "Thou shalt have no graven images or no pictures." In a synagogue or in a mosque, there are no pictures of people in there, because they are following what's in the Ten Commandments. But in Christianity, they decided to veer away from that. They passed this decree at the Second Council of Nicaea, and that's why images and statues are in Christian churches.
Very interesting. And again, the focus was to have people focus outside of themselves rather than within themselves.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Right.
Now,
which contradicted what Jesus taught.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Of the kingdom of God being within.
So now this seminar on July 10th is going to cover everything.
We're going to cover everything.
Okay. Wow. That's a blockbuster event. Okay.
Because all of us, every one of us, we have two bodies. We have a spirit body, we have a physical body. And the moment that our heart stops, it gives birth to the spirit body, and we go on. We do not go to some midway house or purgatory or any place like that to be judged. We just go right on living.
Now, Sidney actually has one of the quotes that is the foundation of this program. It's a little glared, but I think our folks can get the hint that a lot of the quotes that we are bringing up here, folks, are in the Bible. You just need to look for them.
Right.
And it confirms the foundation of this entire program, and making known the unknown, moving down to Charleston and continuing in that part of the country.
Yeah.
Very interesting. One of the other questions that I had was, what are you hoping to accomplish by having people come, and maybe it's sort of an obvious question, but having people just come and see and be in your presence and hear all of this information?
Their
why?
life will change.
Okay.
Their life will change completely. They're not going to become religious fanatics. They're going to know the truth, and the truth will set them free. I assure you. Okay. There's some other things I've got to tell them about what happened in the last 22 years there. The powerful information.
Okay.
Powerful information.
What usually happens when people get exposed to this body of knowledge is they want to learn more. And it's it's our goal to really open up have some classes down there, and to start a church down there where people who want to come to learn will have an opportunity to do so. So that's
Okay.
part of
You see,
launching this.
there's a lot of people that don't go to church, but there's no way they can explain why they don't go, or they don't want to explain. And so I really want to deal with people that have an open mind and really want to know something they can depend on, you see?
Okay.
And I don't mean to be boasting about this, but I wanted to add this. If anybody is watching this program, they want, if they can get through to the FBI. In January of 1981, I had a vision as clear as if I was looking at it on a TV screen of a group of people on one side on the sidewalk, and they were getting ready to take pictures of somebody coming out of the building on the other side of the street. And then I realized that's the President Reagan. And it was one of the people working in the building where my offices were. They insisted on my calling the FBI. She got them on the phone, and I told them. And sure enough, it happened almost 100% as I had seen it in the vision.
You're talking about the assassination attempt.
Assassination attempt. And 2 hours after that assassination attempt happened, 2 FBI men came to the door, and they put me through the 3rd degree. And the one man, the one that was Afro-American, he was the biggest skeptic of all. But while I was talking to them, Spirit told me something to say to him, and I said it. He really got shook up. And the other man, who was his boss, wanted me to finish it because it was something he didn't want the boss to know, because if the boss knew it, he wouldn't be working for the FBI. I'll never forget that experience. But it's something that I didn't go campaigning for. I was born with the gift of the Spirit. My father thought I was possessed by the devil, and so did everybody else.
So I guess what you're saying, especially for the people in the Charleston area that will see this, is that you have credentials.
Yes, I do.
And you worked with the FBI, and you continue to work with the FBI. Yeah. And if they ever wanted to check up on this, you are recorded in their offices.
On their system, their computer system.
Okay.
I do not know how much of that information they give out, but after 9/11, they certainly came to me and talked to me.
They've been in touch with you.
Yes, very much so.
We also have here a flyer that you brought of the seminar that people may start to see in the newspapers, at local stores. You might see it in an odd number of places in the Charleston area. So if our control room could bring that up and you could see this. When you see this, folks, I think it's unusual enough that it will catch your eye when you see it around, and you can see that it is at the Town and Country Inn and Conference Center, July 10th this year, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And at the end of this program, there's a phone number that you can contact to make reservations, because the seating is limited in this place. And it will be first come, first serve, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've been to conventions and services all over the country, or other countries too, and I've never been to a place which was all day long for a measly $25.
Oh, right, right.
I mean, it's usually $100 and some dollars up to $500 a day.
Right. You're actually asking for a very minimal donation.
Very much
And
so.
a donation's a donation.
Because I want the people to understand the truth, and the truth will set them free. I mean that sincerely.
And so this is really for you, your first stepping out into creating a new church in the Charleston area.
Yeah.
Yes.
And since you don't have a huge religious organization backing you, you have to do it in sort of unorthodox and unorthodox way.
I would rather call it a learning center than a church, truthfully.
Okay.
Learning center.
Why would you say that?
Well,
because you learn a lot.
Let me
Okay.
respond to that. When I was a kid and used to go to the synagogue every Saturday for Sabbath services, it was the same thing week after week, year after year. I mean, they changed what part of the Bible or Torah they read. But other than that, it was the exact same thing over and over and over, just recycled over and over. When you come to the Gifts of the Spirit Church, it's different every week. The same thing is not said all the time. New information is always coming through. There's many times that Reverend Hewitt is awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning and spirit people are talking to him, whether it's A1 or other spirit people or Jesus himself, and they're lecturing him, and he passes on this new information and new insights. So there's constant involvement of knowledge, not only on Reverend Hewitt's part, but on the people who are coming to learn. So it's constantly changing. It's not a stagnant book that people are listening to. It's a living, breathing, vibrant body of knowledge that's coming forth. So that's basically the difference.
I can see what you mean, because just today's program alone, you presented new research based on something that A1 had shared with you, and you confirmed it, and there's an exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Yeah, that I came across 2 weeks ago, and I took those pictures yesterday.
Absolutely.
To get it ready for the show today.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Okay, so people will be calling the number to reserve a place, or they can just come to the Town and Country Inn and Conference Center on that day.
Yeah.
If they have questions about directions, they can call the inn. They will let people know. And again, at the end of our program, we have a number that people can call if they just want more information about the program. Now, you're also going to be featuring your first book at this at the seminar.
Yes, they'll be able to purchase it if they wish.
Okay, very good. And I understand that the second book in the making is just about ready to come out. Did you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we've just located a publisher, and the turnover time to publish will not be too great. I would say within the next month and a half, it will definitely be published. Okay. And it's called Crossovers. The control room has a graphic that they can pull on the screen of what the cover is going to look like, or close to it.
Whoa.
Part of the cover. It's Crossovers. It's talking about the origins of homosexuality. It's based on what A1 taught, and the conversations that Rick, myself, and A1 had, where Rick was learning about how to accept his sexual identity. Because Rick was very steeped in his religion, and he had a hard time breaking down what he was taught to believe something counter to it, similar to what I had to go through on a different level, dealing with the Bible and stuff. So the book is constantly making Rick look at his religious beliefs compared to what he was teaching, and then presenting all these facts about what we found in Turkey and so forth.
And just reminding our viewers, Rick was the young man, Carl, who came to you for a reading some time ago, and he was ready to kill himself.
Yes.
Yeah,
he actually brought a gun to that reading.
Yes.
Okay, and that was, you would say that that's the inspiration, or was the inspiration for this book.
Yes.
And maybe it would reach out to other young people.
His mother's younger sister suggested that he come and see me because I would be able to help him understand himself.
Well, it was good of them to refer him to you.
Right.
So you've definitely helped people.
I want to mention this at the end of this program. Jesus was one of the greatest mediums that has ever lived. The Jewish people always called him a prophet. The word prophet, seer, oracle, medium, those are different words to describe the person who is gifted. And he said many times to his students, what you see me do, you can do. Even greater things shall you do. Well, he knew that when these people developed, and he was very disappointed that more of his students didn't develop. And Peter, James, and John were the only three that he allowed to go with him up on the mountain when Moses and Elijah appeared. And he told me himself that before he came to the world, there was Moses and Elijah and Jesus in the world of spirit, and it was Jesus who volunteered to come back here and try to eliminate the ignorance that was running rampant on the planet.
Okay. I am sure that right there sets up a great mental challenge, if nothing else, for the people in the Charleston area who would be interested in attending this seminar.
This is why he, Jesus, wanted Peter, James, and John, the developed three, to see who it was he was always talking to.
See, that was what we call a materialization seance, because the etheric body of Moses and Elijah materialized so that the students could see it with their physical eyes, because they didn't have they weren't clairvoyant, they couldn't see it.
That's
and
right.
Moses had been dead about 1,400 years, and Elijah had been dead about 700-800 years. And so if this doesn't prove that life continues after death, and that these people could make themselves physically seen to other physical people, this is what this gift of mediumship is all about. But see, people don't understand it. It's very interesting in this Byzantine exhibit. They have many pictures showing the Mount of Transfiguration, because apparently this is a big theme in the Eastern Orthodox Church. But yet they really don't understand it's mediumship.
Okay, all right.
That's all it is.
You've got so much information to share with these people. I would say myself, if that I were even a particularly religious person, I might just come to see if you've really got it down pat or not, just to see if you stack up against what I knew. If I were, critical of this seminar or the program that you're going to be putting together, I would just come out of sheer curiosity, just to take a look at it, to see what this is all about.
I'm just going to touch on this. He told me that in Charleston there are 2 types of viruses that's running rampant, and he wants the people there to know about it, and he wants me to tell them how to get rid of the virus.
Really? Okay.
That's a heavy one.
Yes, it sounds like.
And I'm not about to I'm not about to discuss that on the program.
Okay, all right. Well, it sounds to me like you have plenty to share with people
Yes, we do.
at this seminar. One of the other questions that I had was about your expectations when the seminar is over. Where are you going to go from there? What are you going to do next? What are your next plans?
I'm going to let those in the higher dimensions take over.
Okay,
They've never let me down.
all right, okay.
Don't forget, I had 2 strokes last year, and they pulled me through that second stroke. The hospital notified everybody on the list to come to the hospital. I had 3 hours to live, and somewhere in there I heard a voice says, "You've got to go back. Your work is not done." So here I am in front of these cameras again.
And of course, the book, the second and third books coming out soon. That should raise some eyebrows, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Because the topic of homosexuality is already controversial enough.
Yes.
I was interested in talking a little bit more about the cover of that book.
Oh, that cover.
Where did that cover come from?
Oh, that cover is one of the precipitated cards that we asked for. We specifically called Hewitt up and said, could Spirit had told Carl that if we go there, that they would try to give us the cover for the book. And that picture there of the woman crossing over the canyon there, going from the spirit world into the physical world and transforming from a female into a male, is part of what this theory is all about.
Let me I don't mean to correct you here, but I was wondering, because he lives in New Jersey, I lived in Connecticut. He says, what's the cover going to be on this book? And I said, I'll ask Spirit. And then they told me to go sit in the presence of the medium, which is in Indiana.
Yeah.
So I made a special trip out there and sat in front of him, and lo and behold, there it is.
So
Crossovers.
this came from the spirit world.
Yes.
Never untouched by human hands.
And in the middle of the picture, you'll notice there's a rainbow there, and the rainbow is one of the symbols of the gay civil rights movement. And
Absolutely.
so it's interesting that they employed all that.
And the canyon represents death.
Right.
Really?
Yes.
The canyon represents death, and see, the body is now dying and crossing over, and on the other side becomes a male.
So in the bottom left, it's almost like it's the back of a female or the front of a female?
The front of the female. She's going from the spirit world into the physical world, into the female soul's entering a male body. That's what,
Almost through the foot, or I guess the left foot of the male body.
That's
Something
the way.
like that.
That's the way. Actually, the spirit would go into the chest. In reality, but this was just a artistic license in order to show this
Right.
crossing over.
Right.
Making almost like a bridge from one world into the other.
Okay. Well, there's a lot that remains to be seen and heard, and this is all so exciting, And I hope that the viewers in the Charleston and surrounding areas are able to make the time to come and be part of this experience. This is not just a seminar, it sounds like to me. This is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
It is.
To sit in the presence of these gentlemen here and have the knowledge shared with you from years and years and a lifetime of research to take with you into your next several lifetimes.
There's a former Catholic nun sitting in the studio here watching us do this tape, and since I've seen her doing the pictures, the filming, I mean the artwork, it's fabulous. There are two spirit people, artists from the past, that's moving her hands, painting all of this, and she's going to be there and to show the pictures that she's done.
Oh boy, that will be exciting too. A former nun.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
24 years in nun.
Okay. We need to wrap up. I wish we could talk more about this topic. I want to remind our viewers that at the end of the program, there's an email address that you can write to that we always have for questions and suggestions. Reminding you about the seminar, Town and Country Inn and Conference Center, July 10th. In Charleston, right off of the Savannah Highway.
Yeah.
Also that there's a new phone number at the end of the program that you can call to ask questions, to make reservations. I want to remind our viewers that they do have this book, My First Encounter with an Angel, Revelations of Ancient Wisdom, that you can order at any time by simply calling that phone number or writing to the email address. And above and beyond that, the most important thing, I want to thank my guests, Sidney Schwartz and Reverend Carl Hewitt.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our viewers, and I want to see our viewers at that seminar at the Town and Country Inn and Conference Center on July 10th. Until then, be well.